Heyo, welcome to Geek Freaks. I am Frank, and I'm joined today by Kevin. How you doing, Kevin?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good. Thanks for having me.
Kevin, can you tell us what you've been up to lately? I know you've been streaming a lot. What are you playing?
Yeah, so I've been streaming quite a bit of Spelunky 2, and I sighed when I said that because it's a very frustrating game. I love it. I love Spelunky. But man, the deaths are fast and furious in that one.
Yeah.
Mostly
Yeah,
what I've been
when something goes wrong, it goes wrong in a very terrible way, it seems like.
Oh yeah, it definitely goes it goes wrong quickly and hard.
What is the name of your channel so everybody can go check you out?
Twitch.tv/Kevinjection for that, and then anything else that I might do in the future, wink, wink, hint, hint, go to streamerlinks.com/Kevinjection.
Kevinjection. Okay, that's good to remember. Everybody keep that in mind. All right, moving forward, we're going to be doing a level up, and we're talking about Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. It's a classic. Kevin, did you play this game when it first launched?
Yeah, I didn't have an Xbox at the time, so I almost bought an Xbox specifically for this, or rather talked my parents into it, but instead I got the PC version of it. And yeah, played it right when it came out, and yeah, loved it.
Yeah, my first experience was on the Xbox, and then I played it on mobile afterwards.
How did that play?
Actually, I guess if we're quite well, really good. Yeah, I played really good. I was surprised by that. But I played it on the iPad, and it was still the same thing where I'm like stopping in certain locations at all of the scenery and stuff. I was like, man, I cannot believe this is being played on an iPad. Just fun. And the controls were as good as the controls get for Knights of the Old Republic.
The mobile version was pretty cheap, too, if I remember correctly.
$10.
Yeah.
All right, so this was developed by BioWare, published by LucasArts, and released July 15th of 2003 on PC, Mac, and Xbox. The reason they went with Xbox is because, of course, they could have gone PlayStation as well. The operating system that ran the Xbox was similar enough to the PC, and one of the guys in the small crew that made this game was familiar with the Xbox inner workings. So that's why they decided, let's just go Xbox exclusive. We'll go into the development of this game. It was a very tricky development because the way this game is made is so unique to any other game that was being made at the time. That they were like, we're pretty limited in what we can offer. Really, the PC was where this thing was meant to be played. The notable personnel on this was Casey Hudson, who would go on to make Mass Effect. He's kind of like one of those guys where when he's attached to a product, you're kind of like, I trust it a little bit more. What do you think about Casey?
That definitely used to be the case. I'm not going to say that it's still the case, and that goes true with the rest of BioWare in general.
Yeah. They definitely slipped up towards the end of Mass Effect. What was the other one? I think it was like Jade Empire or something like that. Are you familiar with that game?
Jade Empire was good. Yeah, that came out around the same time as the KOTOR games did. They're like in between them, I think. Yeah. It was good.
I was always like, someday I'll get that one that's cheap. And it seems to never be cheap enough for me, apparently. For me to go ahead and pick it up.
I don't think that game would actually hold up as well as it did when it first came out, honestly.
You don't think so?
No.
Well, I mean, like, the graphics for Old Republic doesn't, but it's still good. You don't think the same thing?
Yeah, I don't know. It felt different. It felt like there was less of a budget behind it. It felt less polished, which added to the charm at the time. But comparing it to Knights of the Old Republic now, which is what people would do with Jade Empire, I don't think it would hold up.
Okay, well, that's good to know. That means that my Haspel sale level just went down even more, so board game has to be almost free now. All right, we're moving on to the tutorial of the game. We're starting with you, Kevin. Kevin, you got 1 minute. Can you describe this game? You choose however you want to describe it in 1 minute.
I think I got this. All right, so Knights of the Old Republic takes place about 4,000 years before the mainline Star Wars franchise, so before any of the movies. Totally new lore, totally new characters, everything. The Sith Empire is trying to take over the Galactic Republic. You play as a soldier of the Galactic Republic, or so you think. Start off on a ship. You don't have very many memories of your past, if any. Kind of get flashes throughout the game. You meet a ragtag crew of people that you collect along the way, try to help out, try to find out their backstory, which is the key of the game for me. Go from planet to planet, figuring out the problems that each planet is having. And the pressure's on. I'm not going to get into major spoilers right now until we get later on, but yeah, the big boss fights at the end have a little bit more of an emotional feeling than you would think they would to them. And lightsabers go vroom. Also, swoop bikes.
Okay, that's pretty good. You had 10 seconds left on the clock. That's pretty good. As long as you got that lightsaber goes vroom thing, I was happy with that. That's basically where we're at. That was, dude, that was great job. For 50 seconds, you kind of nailed it.
I
We'll go
planned
into a little more depth but in story, but man, you really did a good job.
I planned the first 5 seconds of that. Everything else was ad-libbed.
I think you didn't mention much of the gameplay. Well, would you kind of speak to that real quick, if like in the last 10 seconds kind of thing?
Yeah, turn-based combat, RPG elements. I guess big RPG elements because it is an RPG. Start off as not a Jedi and then become a Jedi.
Basically it, right? A couple things we want to make sure we bring up too is the actions that you take will give you either light side or dark side points, but they don't change you from being a Jedi, which is one thing I think that would have been kind of cool. I don't know. Story wise, it really couldn't have happened, but it would have been nice to kind of like become so dark that you just simply are not a Jedi anymore. There's that. What else is? I think that's basically it. Yeah, the turn-based combat was a biggie in the game, and it to me makes it stand out in my memory the most of everything else.
Yeah.
But that's it for tutorial. You guys are ready to start the game, so let's go. Level 1, story. We're gonna be going over the major plots here, but I think we need to start off with a twist so that we can like explain everything else that wraps around it. So the twist is huge in this game. You want to lead us off? What was the twist of Knights of the Old Republic?
So you have flashes of memory throughout the game, and it turns out that the character you're playing is the big bad Sith Lord, and you just don't know it the whole time. And the big actual villain of the game is your apprentice.
Darth Malak. I've got a statue of Darth Malak right above me, actually, which is pretty great.
That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, you're Darth Revan, and one of the coolest names, of course, of all time. And that really shook me when it happened. I remember. Okay, so for my personal path, I was like total paladin, like light side all the way, helping everybody can, doing those extra missions because, that's just what a Jedi would do. But I remember when I first discovered that, wait, I'm Darth Revan, I'm actually a bad guy, you guys were lying to me, I went full Sith after that and just started being an asshole. I was like, Malak, you didn't save me, you're going down. Like my motivation completely changed. Bastilla, I didn't want nothing to do with her. My companions just swapped in a second. No longer was there a Wookiee next to me, so fast. And then I remember very well. My motivation at the end was I'm gonna take control of my Sith empire, and I am gonna bring the Republic down. Like emotionally, I was so invested in like I'm this good guy, I'm this new hero, and then you find out they've been lying to you. That emotionally, for me as a player, I flipped on a dime, and I normally am just like good all the way to the end. I mean, I get that Jesus achievement on Fallout all the time, that kind of thing. For you, how did that twist hit you?
Well, first, I'm just going to say when you said my Sith Empire, that sounded just like Anakin from Episode 3, so I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing for you.
Right, exactly.
Honestly, the twist didn't hit me that hard because the main story, like the main Revan character of the game, didn't really do much for me. It was all the side stuff that actually left the biggest impact on me. So when I didn't expect the twist at the time. Obviously, it's 2003. It was 17 years ago. I was pretty young, and I didn't see it coming or anything, but it wasn't like a huge surprise. I didn't dramatically change my gameplay, I don't think, from it my first playthrough. I just kind of went with it the same way I was. I'm like, I'm this new character now. I'm whatever character this is I created, and I'm not Darth Revan anymore, and Malak can die.
Yeah. So you, okay, that was good. So you were totally detached to the idea that like, oh, I'm actually supposed to be this other character. You were just like, no, I'm a new character. Forget my old identity because you never played as that old identity, right?
Yeah, new Jedi, new me.
There we go. That's how you guys should live your life. New Jedi, new you. All right, so let's go ahead and get into the story. This play takes place 4,000 years before the films, and the major threat that's being kind of shown to you guys is this Darth Malak. He controls the city that you first land on, and he's just kind of this thing you're constantly trying to hunt down because, of course, he's just a Darth. It's that kind of general bad guy. He is the newly in charge leader after Darth Revan had vanished, and so that's kind of this like. There's also this little mystery there, but really, it's not leaned on much. Most of the thing is that Malak is this big bad. Do you feel like he was a constant threat, like he was actually a worthy villain in the game?
I think so. They made him more like mysterious and ominous enough that he felt like an ever-looming threat, but didn't really do too much outside of the destroying of Taris at the beginning of the game.
Yeah. Yeah, because it wasn't clear, but was he the one that attacked your ship that made you have to land on Taris, or no?
I think that was. I don't remember exactly, but I think that was just some other Sith ship.
Okay, yeah, normal shenanigans in space. All right, so you crash land on Taris in your escape pod, and you're with Republic pilot Karth Onasi.
Oh, yay.
Let's. So as you're going, right, as you're going, you're collecting these different people to join you. So we're just going to go ahead and run down the list real quick here. These are companions that help you out, and they're really kind of leaning on what side of the spectrum you're on. Either you're light or dark, and there's some of them that like them either way. So there's Karth, there's Mission Veo, I think it is. Zalbar, which I'm sure was on everybody's list for a while there. Jolie Bindo, HK-47, T3M4, Bastilla Sean, and then Candaris Ordo, or just the Mandalorian. Everybody knows him as the Mandalorian. Did you have any favorites out of those?
I don't remember Jolie Bindo. I don't remember that character at all, so I'm going to say not them. HK-47 is always a fan favorite. Everybody loves HK-47. I actually quite liked T3M4 because he's the first companion that you get, and you've got him for quite a while when you're going through that first planet. And I actually liked that little droid. I don't know why. I don't think I did at the time, but thinking back about it, I definitely do. Karth is very bland. Bastilla is, well, she's not a crew member, is she? Bastilla?
No, she's kind of the other main character in the story, realistically. And so that's one thing I kind of had a problem with her is like she takes up a lot of the spotlight and a lot of the story, which makes sense because she is important to the story. But the entire time is like, yeah, but I'm the one that made the decisions, you know?
Right.
So yeah, she was kind of a weird companion because she was really a leading role.
I also quite liked Mission and Zalbar. Didn't care for Candaris, didn't care for Karth.
Yeah. Yeah, Jolie Bindo he was like a bald Jedi. I think he had a yellow saber, and he was really balanced, was my thing. The things he would say were very Yoda-esque in the fact that we're like all about, we don't necessarily can't get rid of the Sith. We just need to bring down their numbers to a reasonable number. Stuff like that. It's always these checks and balances, which was things that made you think while you're walking around. It wasn't like Bastilla, who was so sure of herself that the Jedi were the way to go. It was somebody that was like, well, hold on now, which was you as the player. So that kind of made me relate to him more. And the voice acting for him was really good too.
Sounds like a character I would like a lot more now than I did when I was a kid playing the game.
Right, yeah. It's tough as a kid because a lot of times, we're just like, oh, I'm a Jedi. This is what I dress up as, so I'm definitely a Jedi, So while you're there at Taris, the city's eventually attacked by Malak. You discover Bastilla Sean. They've been looking for her, and you guys narrowly escape the city, and you're off to the Dantooine, which is a Jedi temple, and there you become a Jedi and whatnot, and you learn the existence of the Starforge. How did you like that section, becoming a Jedi? Did you feel like it was rewarding, like it was really transformative, or did you kind of like, it's just another story beat?
To me, it was what I was looking forward to the most in the game, and every time I play the game, it's kind of the thing that I try to get to the quickest. I try to get through Taris as fast as possible while still doing everything. Yeah. I loved Dantooine specifically because of the like Game of Thrones-esque house versus house dynamic of the backstory on that planet, personally.
Yeah. Yeah, I was kind of was let down because I came into Star Wars in the Coruscant. Like, I came in at the prequels, right? So Coruscant was this huge city that had a giant Jedi temple. I was kind of expecting that, and it was like, oh, this little thing that's kind of hidden away, which makes sense for 4,000 years ago. But I was kind of like, I just expected more. So I was a little bit let down by that. And then I felt like the process of becoming a Jedi was a little rushed. But looking at the entirety of the story, yeah, you had to kind of get past that checkpoint, really, because that was the end of Act 1 and then into Act 2, so you kind of needed that to be a quicker area. With the discovery of the Starforge, do you think that was a big enough threat, or do you think it was kind of just, oh, look, this is Death Star 2.0, or actually, 3.0 or whatever, for Star Wars franchise?
Yeah, I didn't care. It was just the next Star Wars super weapon.
Yeah, it seems to be something that they really like to lean on. It was really all about Darth Malak in my book. Got to get him down.
100%.
Yeah. Okay, the best part of the game story-wise for me is you're going to be then bouncing around from planet to planet and search for these star maps that give you clues of how to find the Starforge and Darth Malak himself. So again, like the companions, we're going to just shoot down the list of different planets. We'll talk about our favorites. So we have Taris, of course, when we were first on. We have Korriban, Tatooine, Manon, Lihon, Dantooine, which is the one with the Jedi Temple, and then Kashyyyk, of course. Everybody knows Kashyyyk. So you were saying that Dantooine was your favorite?
Definitely not my favorite. No, Korriban was 100% my
Good.
favorite.
Yeah.
The ominous sounds, all the Sith lore, which is something that no video game or movie prior to that had really delved into very much. The lore of the Sith, and it was, even though it's all retconned now for the most part, it was, oh man, just seeing everything dark and bright reds. Yeah, let's go with that.
There you go. Yeah.
Red everywhere, just the caves with the statues, and oh man, everything about Korriban was just everything I wanted it to be.
And it really had this interesting story because you were there infiltrating the Empire, if I remember correctly. And so the decisions you made were then under a mask. So you were like, okay, look, either I'm good or darker Jedi, but nevertheless I have to pretend to be straight up evil while still trying to hold my identity. So it kind of add an extra layer to all your choices that you made, and I really like that. It was a good point in the game where you're like, okay, let's throw a twist on this and try to be somebody I'm not, while still holding true to who I am. That was more complex than most games had me thinking at the time. When at the time I was playing Tony Hawk 2, saying it was really tricky.
Not
to
a
add
whole
that
lot
in there. That was a good choice.
Light side versus dark side options in Tony Hawk.
No, just got to grind all the way. Yeah. Manon to me was really cool because you had this, ocean planet and this little floating city, and you just kept thinking like it just kind of kicked in these things of like, how do these people evolve? And the whole time you're there, you're sitting there like, I want to know more about these people is really good. And then of course the story of Kashyyyk, which I think is a story that I remember the most, and that's where you're trying to fight off slavery on the Wookiee homeworld. And the whole time you're dealing with one of your companions, Zabar. His family is there, and you're trying to save his family. And some of the cutscenes I remember very well when you're like being lowered down the sides of the trees into the lower parts of the tree line. It was like we're going into darkness, and yet it feels like it's cooler and stuff down here, and this is like actually where they could survive. I don't know, man. It was just one of those worlds where it slowed. It take this big, and it's what something Star Wars in general needs to do. I think it takes this big galactic war, and then it shrinks it down to one spot with its own story. And I was super invested in the well-being of these Wookiees. And I think something that Star Wars in general needs to do, because we have these big galactic wars, and you're seeing people being mown down, and you don't care about any of them as much. But really, if you're to get to like just one planet and like one trade dispute on a single planet, I think is a better way to tell these stories in this world.
Yeah, it puts you in the mindset of the common person in those situations, and it really gives you a different perspective, and it makes you appreciate the grand story of it a little bit more, I think.
You're right. Yeah. That way, when people are just dying by the thousands and stuff like that on these battlefields, you're like, oh no, that guy. Damn, that's too bad. We don't quite get that anymore. I don't know. It kind of reminds me of like if you're looking at like A New Hope, right, or the original Star Wars, when his aunt and uncle died, and he went on from there. But that whole first part, when he's sitting there like picking the droid and stuff like that, you kind of saw what it was like in a daily life for somebody that's just out there as a moisture farmer. I can't really think of a moment like that in the newer Star Wars that's where you see the daily life.
The only thing I can think of is the broom kid at the end of The Last Jedi. Kid that, never mind.
Exactly. Well, you nailed it. That's how much attention they're giving it.
Yeah.
They really should be expanding on that. And I think that Knights of the Old Republic is this world that's so deep of like politics and discovery of the Force and discovery of these two sides that it really sets yourself up for something really great. Okay, so those are your planets you're going through, and then eventually you learn the huge twist. You're brainwashed Darth Revan, who was saved by Bastilla after attack, and then was then brainwashed at the temple you were at earlier. So, you either are going to be full of rage at the Republic, and you're going to turn on them, or you're going to take out Malak as a usurper and become, Lord of the Sith, or you'd be like, oh, I learned the errors of my ways, and I'm a good guy now, and you're going to become the hero of the Republic. I took Malak out and became Sith Lord, and it was started enslaving planets right away. And it sounds like you went the other way with that.
My first playthrough, yeah. Did you only play it through like one full time?
I played it through twice, both ways, and the second time I told myself, be a good guy. Nope, I went bad again. So, gotta YouTube the videos on what it looks like when you're a nice guy. Yeah.
I always play those games light side first, dark side second, and then somewhere in the middle if I go through it a third time.
Yeah, I usually go light side, but something about the betrayal felt like this is a good time to like, all right, I'm gonna sink my teeth in on this and just go crazy on him. The problem is I think you leveled up your companions, if I'm not mistaken, and none of my bad side companions were like leveled up or I had any interest in them at all. That was tricky.
Yeah, trying to pick the best character to suit the best side characters to suit how your play style was always when you're changing your play style that late into the game is really difficult.
Yeah, because I kept I think his name is Zanzibar, whatever. Yeah, Zalbar. I kept him at my side all the time, but as soon as you go dark side, he betrays you, so you can't have him around at the end. But you can have HK-47. I know he was loyal. I think Bindo trade. I know that the Mandalorian was on your team no matter what. Matter of fact, worships you if you swap. And but I think that was a bit like I knew I could count on HK-47. That's about it, really. Bastilla, man, maybe Bastilla. Like there's something with Bastilla too, because she goes dark side for a second there, and then you like save her. There's all kinds of things with that too.
Yeah, there's a lot of
Yeah.
stuff. Oh man, I don't remember all of that. I need to go back and play it.
Yeah, there's so many little side things. This game has so much nuance that you kind of forget about. There's like these flashbacks, like yeah, she was in black, and because she died to Malak saving me, but then he turned her. There's all kinds of things like that. It's like I kind of remember those. It's like trying to like pinpoint the small things that happened in a Game of Thrones because it's like, oh yeah, there was that one thing where that guy was rowing off,
You're
stuff like
right.
that. Character development. Let's go into that and go into that for a little bit. Again, the Zalabar fight. Before leading up to that, he was just this really cool Wookiee. Then after the planet, I felt like this guy's got my back the entire time. He's now out here because he has like the life debt to me, and I'm indebted to him too, just because now there's like now I'm actually invested in the well being of his planet. That motivated me further on. So I felt like that was really good character progression because again, going into that, it was just like cool Wookiee. After that, I was like my best friend. Uh, was there any other like character development moments you could really think like? Was there any characters you were further invested in as you played?
Uh, Probably. I remember liking, even though she was really annoying. Mission was she had a really good backstory to it, and I remember growing some attachment to her. I don't
Yeah,
remember like the specifics of her backstory, to be honest. But uh, Zalbar, yeah, I just thought the entire time he was a cool Wookiee. Even the Kashyyyk storyline didn't do a whole lot for me because Star Wars books at that time, anytime that there was a Wookiee story, it was because the Wookiee was being enslaved and the hero freed the Wookiee slave. That's just an easy
yeah,
go-to for Wookiees for some reason. So I've heard that story several times by that point.
yeah.
Um, yeah, Canderous just liked to blow things up, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Karth was pretty milk toast.
Oh, he was so boring.
Yeah.
He was kind of pathetic when you go back to the ship and you'd see him there and he's just like, so how's the adventure going? Like, oh buddy, just make sure everything's clean, huh?
Try to look out the window from time to time, see how we're doing.
Yeah. Oh man. Uh okay, yeah. So and then like Bastilla was one of those things where I know I was supposed to like really be invested in her, and I found myself becoming more okay with her as the game went on, but I really just didn't really care for her that much. I don't know. She good voice acting. I don't know about character written. I'm not sure. What are your thoughts on her?
Yeah, great voice acting. You're definitely right about that. I thinking back on it now, I don't think that character had very many. I don't think she did very many things incorrectly. You can empathize with her pretty well and her decisions. And
Yeah.
battle meditation is freaking cool. I'm gonna say that's the first time that we saw any battle meditation. Basically, she uses the Force to inspire soldiers and whoever else around her to do better and to be better, which is a really cool thing to add to as a Force power that we had never seen prior to that. So I like her for that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I forgot about that. That's a really cool actually. Yeah, that's something that should be used more in the movie. Because you'd think that you'd have just Yoda during the Clone Wars up there, just like inspire, and everybody starts going
Right.
more, hardcore. All right, before we wrap up the story section here and move on to the next level, let's talk about pacing. And I think that that's kind of one of the strong points in this game. It's very movie-like in that sense, or actually, yeah, movie-like because we have a clear act structure here. Act one ends with um, Jedi Temple, learning of the Star Forge, stuff like that. In Act One ends, and then you're going from planet to planet that has these really cool adventures. Feels like a classic Star Wars in that way. And then Act Three kicks off once you learn that you're Revan, and then you're like, what do I do with this information? Moving on to taking out Malak and stuff like that. Do you feel like the pacing of this game was done well, or did it have any slow points?
Well, it's kind of paced at the speed that you want to pace it at because it's a long RPG. It's a
Right.
good Bioware game. So I think that it is as well paced as can be for a game of that scope. It does have
Yeah.
clear cut act transitions, like you were saying. It's yeah, it was paced super well. The story moved along at the speed you wanted it to, and all the side stuff was your decision whether or not you inspected that even. So yeah, went
Yeah.
fast and not too fast. It was great.
Yeah. I thought it was pretty solid. All right, we're moving on to our scores then. What are you scoring this out of 30?
I am going to score the story, I would say 26. The main
26.
story of the game didn't really hit me that hard. It was all the little stuff along the lore building, the story building that really bumped it up from a lower score that I was going to originally give. Yeah, I'm
Okay.
going to say 26 out of 30.
Still a very good score. Mine might be outlandish now, thinking back on it, but in context, so before this, in the Star Wars universe, I've only seen the prequels, and I played Star Wars Battlefront. Those are the two things I had. So this was actually probably the best Star Wars story I had at the time. I gave it a 30 out of 30. Perfect score. I don't do that often, but I liked the main story. That twist was a big deal to me, and I had no idea that Wookiees could be enslaved. So I was like, "What? We have to save them." So I gave it a full 30 out of 30. Just totally fanboy for this.
Heck, given the context, that makes sense. That is a really high score, though.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Well, gameplay is not going to be the same. So moving on to gameplay, we're leveling up. All right, we're gonna start off with the basics: control, movement, combat, and camera. Uh, any of those four really stood out for you, good or bad?
No, I played it with mouse and keyboard, which was a lot easier, I think, than playing it with a controller. Even though the HUD was kind of designed around it with a controller in mind,
Hmm.
um, it was very simple to go through with a mouse.
I think that would have been best for me to go with mouse. I ended up playing it with the controller, and I found that the controls are very clunky. And the turn-based thing, which is such an important aspect of the game, I think like we were talking about before the recording, I think would not do as well today. And for me was off-putting in the beginning, and I just kind of like, well, let me power through this for a little bit, and then I fell in love with it. But at first sight, the turn-based thing actually was turning me away. Do you think that would do well today or no?
There's definitely an audience for it. Like we
Yeah,
were talking about before the recording with Baldur's Gate 3 coming along pretty nicely.
right.
Divinity Original Sin has, all the turn-based combat. I didn't play turn-based games before this either, so like you, it did take me a little bit of time to get the hang of.
Yeah, yeah. I think I would have more patience for it now, and I'm really surprised that I actually got into it then, because if I looked at the games I was playing at the time, they were your Crackdown, Halos, all these like real fast-paced first-person shooters. I really didn't have many games that were this slow-paced, methodical. Even like Fable, for example, came out kind of close to this too. Fable did feel faster, although it was a full RPG, and stuff like that. So I don't know. It's kind of this weird thing where it's like, how did I get past this first part when I think back at like being on Taris, and here we are. I'm totally into it.
So
So go ahead.
controlling the turn-based system wasn't that bad, I don't think, with the controller because you could queue up all the attacks and specials that you wanted to, and you didn't have to like pause the game every turn, so to
Right.
speak. You line up all your next turns, like up to 4 or 5 attacks, I think. So it was smooth and fast for a turn-based game, I thought.
My big complaint with it though is it kind of felt like when you're playing a Pokemon game and you're already kind of strong, right? And then you'd come across people and you're like, ugh, or you come across Pokemon, you're like, I really don't want to have to do this just because it's time consuming to say run. It's time consuming to do anything. I kind of felt like that was like, oh, this battle's in the way of me getting more story. And that's not good because that's kind of the gameplay. That's the loop. And to me, it felt like, man, this is kind of just getting in the way personally.
I got
I
you.
don't, yeah. movements, stuff like that. I think actually running around was really good. It was just, to me, I think the camera was fine. There were moments where it kind of like forced the camera perspective in a good way that you're seeing who's talking. That was solid. Um, but yeah, generally it was, it's an era of the time. So like in 2003, I think was when I said this came out. We were still kind of figuring some things out a little bit too. So I will give it that. Okay, moving on to user interface. Now, do you remember any of the hacking or the mini games?
The hacking I don't quite remember, but I remember playing Pazak a lot, the card game.
Okay,
Was that the one that was sort of like blackjack, but little different? I don't
I think
remember.
so. There was a lot of people who got stuck on Taris because of it. I know that much.
Yeah, so I remember it being there, and I think this was the very first game that I played that had this many mini games and wasn't just. It might have even been the first one that had any kind of mini games like this that just took you completely away from the main story, which I thought was
Yeah.
great because, especially with a heavy hitting story like this game is, you like to have little breaks from it from time to time and do something with a little less consequence to it. So yeah, I like the mini games.
There was racing in there too. Or am I mistaken?
Yeah, the swoop racing. I didn't care
Swoop
for that
racing.
part. It
No.
wasn't the racing itself; it was the warring swoop factions that I didn't care for.
Okay.
The
Yeah.
whole story there it just felt childish and petty.
I think I liked that part, and I don't care for the actual swoop racing itself. So I remember thinking like it was kind of like the Warriors underneath Terrace, kind of thing like that, and I kind of
Yeah,
liked that.
yeah. The swoop racing was a little strange because it's like the racing in Battletoads, kind
Okay.
of.
Now you just turned me against it. See what you did
Yeah, I
there?
thought that was got what that was gonna do.
Freaking Battletoads killing me. All right, innovations. This is where I'm gonna be talking a little bit on the Xbox thing. So yes, when this game was developed, they had an issue because the game is very heavy on the dialogue options, and the numbers that the game was running were based off the dialogue and the character development and how that would affect things. Because you also had, so with the dialogue tree, you had to throw in variables like I'm this percentage light or dark, so it ended up branching the trees out even farther than that. So the game was very heavy storage wise and computing wise, but not graphically. So at the time when you're competing against games that were sitting there just like pumping everything they had into, we need to make sure this is smooth and looks beautiful when you're doing it. This really invested its power into something completely different. Um, that's why they had such a hard time with development, and they had to go with the Xbox because it had a similar framework of the PC, which is what this game was really meant for, was PC. And I like the idea of approaching a game's development completely differently than anything else. This idea of how do we make these dialogue trees fit and everything like that. So innovation, I got to give it to this in this dialogue tree system that was so dependent on your choices, not only in the dialogue itself, but in the game. Then it would affect your dialogue later on. And it made development hard, but I think it made the game stand out innovation wise. I can't think of any other game at the time that gave me so many options like that in talking. Can you think of another one?
No, I think this was the one that kind of spawned that trend in games. The whole good versus evil.
Yeah, because I know Fable, you were able to kind of toy around with that, and then you had the wife and stuff like that, which is a whole dialogue tree mess there. But nothing like this, of course. So I'm giving a big chunk of my score to that. The fact that some of my favorite games now, like I'm playing Kingdoms of Amalur, and that has a whole dialogue tree that has the persuasion and stuff like that. And then you have the games like Skyrim and stuff like that spawn later that had these really deep conversations you can have. Even then, even Skyrim now and stuff like that, they definitely don't have the options that you have in this game because they leaned in so heavily on it. So I got to give it a huge part of that, and it really kind of made you feel like you're in a living world because of that too. You could have full-on conversations with people. Let's go on to our scores. We're going to go out of 30 again. What are you looking at for gameplay?
It's going to be high. The only thing I think that takes away from that a little bit is there seems to be a lot of unutilized space in a lot of the maps, and I know that's a very nitpicky thing, but I put this game on a high pedestal, so it's going to be the nitpicky things that I have to focus on. I think
Yeah,
that's a 29 out of 30.
20. Ooh, oh my god. Yeah, you went high.
Yeah,
I went really low. So, um, the innovation is carrying my score. Okay, but what's really hurting it is it felt so clunky to me, and I actually think that it's turn-based access. So, because like, okay, the other turn-based games that we're at right now, we're thinking at like Final Fantasy. I played this one that was all about like Sun God or something like that. God, I can't remember the name of it, but it was really fun. Um, I think this was a less clear turn-based game in that way. I don't know. It was kind of this thing where I really had a hard time getting into it. So my score is actually pretty low. It's 16 out of 30.
Ooh.
I know. And if looking back at first, I was like, "Oh, this game was perfect. I'm gonna have to. This game's gonna be an A." That though, when I looked back at it, and I was like, "Oh, let me watch some old videos and stuff like that and see how it was," because I was like, I don't remember it being all that great." And that's when I was like, "Oh no, this thing was really rough that way." I didn't really sink into the mini games much. They were just kind of a thing you can do. Yeah, so I ended up going pretty low on that one. It's gonna hurt my score at the end for sure.
So
But yeah,
before we level up, I do want to say I loved the control. I loved it was the first turn-based game I ever played, and it was the first Star Wars game on that scale that I played. So everything about it was kind of a first for me, so I had no
yeah.
baseline of comparison. So I think that's why my score is as high as it is, and I kind of use KOTOR as a baseline for current games of that genre.
Well, and it's funny how that happens because the same thing happened with me in the story, where if it's a first, you hold it on a higher pedestal than everything else.
Yeah.
It's the new benchmark for you, so it gets a better score. And I think that's awesome because that's how video games work. Is I always reference this game. Everybody's always heard it. It's Shadow of Mordor, Shadow of War. I hold it such a high pedestal because it created this nemesis system that I think other games should be using. And it's like, yeah, that's an innovation and it was a first for me. So I'll always hold it higher. It's one of those games that just does that for you. Yeah,
See
totally.
that game, I'd be given a much lower score.
Oh boy, we gotta do that one next. That one, oh man, I love that game too much. All right, let's move on to level 3. We're leveling up. Don't you love, by the way, on a side note, guys, I know you're all questioning it. Level up. Are we talking about going through levels or are we talking about you as a person leveling up? We don't know. Yeah, neither do we. We don't know.
It's both. And
So
neither at the same time.
you're now level 3. In level 3, we're going to design. Let's talk about graphics. We're going to go with level design first, which I think is one of the big high points for the design of this game. I myself felt like the levels they felt like they were really open. Like they had a really good job of kind of forcing your perspective to feel really open, and yet you still knew where you were going. And then it had this thing where it had like a lot of NPCs walking, like a Manan and stuff or Milan. I mean, it felt like there was a lot of people living there, and I was just visiting. So it created this open and alive world. And then, of course, again, back on Milan and with like Korriban, there were so many times where I just stopped and just took it all in. It was gorgeous. The ruins on Korriban was like, oh my god, this place is amazing. What do you think about the design level wise?
You hit the nail on the head when you said that it feels like you're just visiting, and I think wasn't able to put that into words as well as you did. It felt like every world in that game was so developed and lived in
Yeah,
that it made it feel like a living, breathing world every time. So the level design itself around it, I think they did a really, really good job building different like architecture based on the planet and based on the lore of the planet.
yeah, yeah. Which is something that Star Wars needs more of because it's this beautiful galaxy, beautiful world that of course we kind of want to keep going back to. But if we still keep seeing just Wookiees, humans, Sith, Jedi, we keep revisiting just the same old people. When you go to a place like Milan, I'm going to keep bringing that one up, where it's just so different that your imagination takes over. That shows the power Star Wars has and can be underutilized sometimes.
And
And this game captured it.
even on Tatooine, like it felt familiar but very different at the same time because the Tatooine's the first planet that you see if you watch the first Star Wars movie. It's the first
Right.
planet that you ever see on the ground, and it felt like that, but also different at the same time. I don't know. It's just they did such a great job of building the worlds individually
It's
while
funny
still
because
fitting
that's
them into the lore.
yeah, you're right. Yeah, it's funny because that's the sad part with my history. It's like my first planet was Naboo.
Oh, Misa no likey that.
Oh man, I'm such a Darth Jar Jar fanboy. Like I tell you, those movies would be so good if they could just totally redo them using the Darth Jar Jar plan. Man, that's so good. All right, character design. We were definitely limited by the technology at the time on this one for sure. Were there any characters that stood out to you as just like, man, that guy looks cool, or that girl looks cool?
Definitely HK-47, and
Hmm.
I'm not going to say this is I'll call it a character, the Ebon Hawk, the ship itself.
Yes.
I loved the design of that. It was loosely based on the Millennium Falcon, but not just like a ripoff of it. It felt different but familiar, which is what this game I think did best.
Yeah. Well, they did do that, and that was actually a choice by the developers. They mentioned that and Darth Malak being kind of reminiscent of Vader. They wanted to kind of have this like respirator dependent guy with Malak were used to kind of bring back the original trilogy a little bit and remind you of those. Yeah, Ebon Hawk looked amazing. And then that's one of the places we got cutscenes was Ebon Hawk taking off and landing. So they just was always really cool looking. Yeah. For me, character design, I think you nailed it with HK, but I was a big fan of Bindo, of course, the Jedi. He just kind of looked really cool. And I don't know, they looked good, not great, but it's just what are you going to do with the technology, right? And the Twi'lek really looked good too. Like all the Twi'leks walking around and stuff like that. They did a good job. I remember staring at like the headpieces and like, okay, can you tell that they're disjointed? No, they actually look pretty good. They actually did a really good job with those. Because sometimes with gaming, what you'll do is you'll attach the bottom of their tendrils. We'll call them tendrils. You'll attach the bottom to the shoulder piece, right? And then the headpiece would be separated. So you'd see that disjointing feature. But no, they actually did a good job of making them feel like they actually are laying there. And they look solid.
That's a really good point. I didn't even think about that. All the different alien races that they used in that game were done really well. Like a Rhodian looked like the Rhodians from the movies, just wearing different clothes. The Ithorians, the hammerhead looking dudes. Oh man, that was the first time that you saw more than like one of those in Star Wars. Freaking cool.
Yeah, yes.
I'm starting to fanboy out. I want to play this game again, damn it.
Then we're doing our job. Everybody, guys, go play this game. We're going to talk about it later on when we can buy it, because that's exactly what we want to happen. I ended up buying the BioShock Collector's Edition after our BioShock level up. So, yes, you could do that for sure. Okay, cutscenes. Now, this blew my mind at the time because they were so awesome. We had the destruction of Taris by Darth Malak attacking. We had all these really cool cutscenes. Of course, the infamous one, which really kind of like shook everybody, was when you found out you were Revan, there was a cutscene that like circled around you, and then it would show your face with your eyes all whited out, and you're taking the Revan mask off. And depending on your character, that actually was your face. So people were like, "How did they do that? How did they put me in the cutscene and stuff like that?" It really kind of
felt like magic at the time.
You're right. That was cutting edge. Other than that, though, like my big complaint on this is I wish they would have more cutscenes, because in the middle of the game, all of Act 2, all we had were landing on planet, taking off on planet. So they're all the Ebon Hawk stuff. Give us more of actually on the planet. There was one where I was mentioning it before, we're going up and down the tree line on Kashyyyk, but more of those, you know what I'm saying? What do you think about that?
Yeah, you mentioned it yourself, but they were really limited technologically what they were able to accomplish and fit on one Xbox disc.
Yeah.
Yeah, more cutscenes would have been great, and BioWare's great at doing them, especially in-game cutscenes where it doesn't have like a fully pre-rendered thing that they just throw on the top of it, but do it solely in-game. I think they wanted to, but it seems like they just weren't able to.
I'm actually bumping up my score as we're talking. I love that. Okay, perfect. Because I had pre-written my scores, but no, it's getting bumped up. Okay. All right, let's move on to the audio. I love to pay attention to the audio in these games. And damn, did this game kill it. So we're talking a soundtrack right now. It was this powerful, sweeping soundtrack, which was required by Star Trek. Star Trek. Oh my God. Oof, I'm so sorry, guys. Star Wars. It was very similar to the work of John Williams, which is what we expected right out of Star Wars. But this was actually done by Jeremy Soule. You guys need to remember that name because he's a legend. He did Oblivion, Skyrim, Dota 2, and so much more. He's been around in gaming for a very long time. And when you think of that, does this not remind you of kind of that Skyrim soundtrack, this like big sweeping soundtrack?
Yeah, it's like the epic feel to it. It just and it fits so well in with the ambiance that the rest of the game gives as well. Yeah, it feels just like that. It's great. I didn't realize that he was the same guy that did all those other games.
Yeah, if you look at his thing, it's funny because it's like, guys got to work. So you're like, oh yeah, Skyrim, and he did all the Elder Scrolls. Actually, he did Morrowind too. And then you're like, oh, and he also did like Candy Crush. I was like, okay, you got to pay the bills. I'm totally fine with that. It's just kind of funny that sits next. But yeah, I mean, just this really good work, really good thing. Sound design. Were there any moments where you were just like, oh, they did a good job with that? Can you remember any in particular?
Yeah, being a lifelong Star Wars nerd, the first time I heard the crack of a lightsaber, oh my god,
Yeah.
nothing beats that. I don't know if you're going to add that sound in or not.
Oh,
but...
you know I will. Oh, you know I will.
Oh man, that was great. Other than that, the swoop bikes actually had a pretty cool sound to them. The ships and the blasters, yeah, it was the sound design was perfect in this game. I thought perfect.
Yeah, they did a good job of kind of bringing in, like, even the stings, like the transitional scene stings, were very Star Wars, which were things that were like, oh yeah, I'm watching a Star Wars now. Mandalorian and stuff like that, all use them now. We have the wipes. They used wipes in there too, which is actually more of a design, graphical design. But they did use the actual star wipes sometimes, not star wipes, regular wipes. They were just reminiscent of the game, so it was really good of the series. That was really good. Voiceover. Anybody stand out for you in the voiceover department?
This is gonna kind of feel like a cop out, but honestly, the random NPCs on each planet having like fully voiced dialogue, even if some of the actual parts that were said were repeated.
Yeah.
I still think that it was really, really cool that every species sounded how it looked, and every one of them you could talk to, and they were fully voiced. I loved that as a kid. It was great.
And that goes back into that development thing we were talking about before, where this game had to be developed so differently than everything else. Where, yeah, maybe my guy doesn't look as good as, like, we'll say Tony Hawk again, but my God, I mean, you just feel like this world is so real when you can literally go to a random bartender and open up a conversation with them, or a guy who just happens to be carrying a package across the street in Taris. You were like, yes, that dude is busy. I'm in his way. It was really cool, and if you ever have a moment where an NPC you stop and you actually listen to what they're saying, that's a testament to the people who worked on that, because that means that your sole mission got distracted by the world you're in. That's always a good sign of the game that you're in. That's awesome. For me, there's three voices that really stand out. So Bastilla was done by Jennifer Hale, which later on would do the Mass Effect games. She also did DuckTales. She's in a lot of Star Wars work. So Clone Wars, Rebels, all those things like that. She does a lot of those too. She has a very Jedi voice, if you know what I'm saying, right? Kind of that like nice, generally highfalutin voice. Works really well.
Kind of authoritative, but not super. There's a word I'm trying to think of. Aggressive.
Yeah, great. Yeah, sixth grade teachery. Yeah, she got a sixth grade
there
teacher.
you go.
So, yeah, Bastilla was your sixth grade teacher who betrayed you. Anyways, Julie Bindo, we have done by, now if you're a voiceover fan, this guy's God. Kevin Michael Richard, he's the voice of Cleveland from Family Guy, Principal Lewis from American Dad, Groot from Avengers Assemble, an excellent show, go watch that please, and Shredder from TMNT. I mean, he's like, he voices all kinds of badasses, and because he has a very distinct voice, it's kind of this deep voice that he's able to go high on, but that's not his register. But what he does, it sounds funny. That's the Cleveland one. But everybody else, he does this lower voice that just fits super well. So,
love doesn't lead to the dark side. Passion can lead to rage and fear and can be controlled. But passion is not the same thing as love. Controlling your passions while being in love, that's what they should teach you to beware. But love itself will save you, not condemn you. But listen to me go on as if I had all the answers. What do I know of love anymore? I'm just a lonely old man who's not even a Jedi.
That's Kevin Michael Richards. If you guys look at his IMDb, he's almost unparalleled on the voiceover work. So it was really cool to see that he actually was in here as one of the very side characters. Bindo was the Jedi that you could have with you that wasn't Bastilla. And it was kind of like, he's just so freaking cool. And then we had Master Vrook Lamar was done by Ed Eisner of Elf, and he's the old man from Up. He was the money guy. Them getting him on here costs a lot of money, so that was pretty cool too.
I love that character.
Yeah. All right. Anything else out of design before we level up?
No, I think we pretty much hit everything that I wanted to.
Perfect. Okay, let's go into our scores. What is your score for design?
Shit, that's gonna be a straight up 30.
Yes. Okay, I'm cool with that. I moved mine up. Mine was going to be a 25 earlier. It is now 27. The only reason it has a small ding is I wish we had more cutscenes in the middle of the game. But, I mean, the voice, the soundtrack, everything was so... And damn, yeah, it's 27 though. We're going to stick with 27. But, I mean, it was really just excellent. This game They killed it. You make me stop and look around and listen to the world I'm in. That is what I want. That's why Skyrim gets a 30 when we do this adventure for Skyrim, because it just does that. We're like, look at that tree move. It's that kind of game. So that's really good.
Look at the water ripple.
All right. We found a secret power. We found our way through a wall we didn't know was invisible. We're on to our bonus level here. This is time for our last adjustments. We're going to look at your score so far, and then we're going to see where we can go from here. So let's tally up your score. All right, so your score is 85 out of 90 so far. Very high score, and you have 10 points to play with. Do you want to add 10 points anywhere, boost us up from a B? The question that we ask is, was this fun? That's kind of the Richter scale for this thing, where you really slide this around on. What do you think?
So I'm going to add 9, and the only reason I'm not adding 10 is because I feel like that's kind of a cop-out, and I don't think it was a perfect game. So I don't want to add 10 points to it, but making it a 94 feels about right, because it is in my top 5 games of all time. It's the baseline that I compare Star Wars games to, and that I compare RPGs to. It is one of the most formative games of my childhood, or my, I guess, teenage years, but it was perfect when it came out for what it was. It's exactly what I needed. It was a near perfect game. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I am going to adjust it by 5 points, and I'm giving it 5 points for one particular thing: the twist. The story really didn't even need for it to already be a really great story for me. That twist was one of those things where it was like, you talked about it at school afterwards. You brought it up to your parents who don't know what video games are. You just kept thinking about it. Just like, this opens up a world of storytelling to me that was like, holy cow. This whole time, and of course, if you're emotionally invested, there's few games that do this to me, but when you're emotionally invested in a video game, and something like this happens to you, it can make your motivation for your gameplay further on just so much more impactful. That twist deserves 5 points on its own, so I'm going to give it its 5 points there. All right, so we're going to the boss battle. Let's see what we have so far. You are at 94 out of 100. I'm 78 out of 100. Design really took a hit. So let's go ahead and summarize our pros and cons, and then talk about where they can buy this game. So summarize the pros and cons of this game for you.
The pros are pretty much everything.
Yeah,
I don't even know what to. There were some cons, like going back and playing it now, it doesn't quite feel the same because you don't get the surprise of the story, especially if you listen to this episode and we spoiled everything for you. But you don't get the surprise of the story, and it does feel dated now because it was an original Xbox game.
Yeah.
I think everything was damn near perfect to what I wanted and what I needed in a Star Wars and game and in an RPG.
Yeah. My pros and cons is, I think it had kind of a slow start, a lot of it due to its combat style, stuff like that. That's personal for me. But if I'm looking back at it, it's one of those games that in nostalgia performs so much better than probably what it was actually in mid-play. In nostalgia, it was informative. It changed how I looked at games. It was an RPG that holds everything else to a new higher standards. Just really fantastic. It's high up for me. It just in nostalgia. But when you're actually revisiting these games, and guys, I find myself doing this a lot now when I review movies and stuff like that for the podcast. You look at things differently. You look at it more analytically, and some of the movies that you think are like perfect before and stuff like that, you see there were flaws. It's just that nostalgia puts real good, drinking goggles over everything. And so for me, that's what I'm going with here. So really great game, slow start, but the twist really saved it at the end, and that's the part that everybody remembers. So, but a really good game. So yeah, that's why I got that 76 out of 100 for me. And then you're sitting at an A, man. You're sitting at a 94. That's really good. We can't suggest this game enough. It is really important you play this game. You can buy it on Steam and mobile for $10. And I'm telling you guys, it plays really good on mobile. I was really surprised by that. It really,
I gotta
really
try
did.
that.
Yeah, totally worth the play. All right, let's talk about the DLC, guys. We got some DLC for this. This is usually where they can save the game with sequels and DLCs and expansions. We had a sequel came out in 2004. We'll save like fully describing that for a future level up. But did you play the sequel?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, that's the reaction right there.
The tone of my voice pretty much explained everything. It wasn't a bad game. We'll talk about that, I'm sure, at some other point sometime. But
yeah,
it was not this game.
That's the thing. That's the thing right there. It just wasn't this game. It was less life changing. It was pretty good. It was pretty good. And then Old Republic was the MMO in 2011. I fully invested myself into this game. Did you have a chance to play Old Republic?
I built a computer for that game. I pre-ordered the collector's edition from GameStop, which is 3 terms that I don't like to use out loud.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I played it, and yeah, it happened.
Yeah, I liked it for a long time, just story wise. Like, it's one of those games, Walt's the same way, where the leveling is a lot of fun, but then when you get to endgame, you're like, it wasn't really well designed for endgame. It has apparently saved itself quite a bit. There's a lot of people who stand by it now. There are features that have been taken over by other MMOs, and still some features that it has as standalone that are really good.
Free to play was a really good choice for them, and I don't mean that derogatorily.
Really no, you're right.
It was great. It was the perfect time for it. It reinvested interest in the game when it needed it. It
has a fan base that are loyal to it, which is a good sign. Yeah.
Yeah, they're still developing new expansions for that and DLC for it too. So it's great.
Yeah. And then for other adaptations, we do have the rumblings. This is always shifting, especially in 2020 when things are just delayed all the time. There is a film franchise coming for this. Last I heard, it was Dan and Dave of Game of Thrones working on it. So they are interested in making a movie for this. As late as 2019, they announced that, yes, a movie around this franchise is coming. I think that's going to be a hit. I kind of don't trust the team making Star Wars movies right now, but you really can't mess this world up. It's so good. It's really tight-knit.
You have so much freedom in this time period because there's nothing canon for it now. Like, these games aren't canon. The books and comics that take place around that time frame are not canon. So you can do anything you want and just use the Knights of the Old Republic video games as a baseline of comparison, I guess. And everybody that watches it will be comparing it to the games as well, which, that could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. I'm cautiously optimistic.
It is one of those things where you're like, guys, just use this as a script, pull the game for your storyboard. Another thing that reminds me of that is I don't know if you've played the Telltale Walking Dead games. Have you played those?
A little bit.
Okay. I feel like, scrap current Walking Deads, use that game as your template, and then you have a home run. And it's like people are afraid to just straight up adapt a game. They're always like, oh, we're gonna make Assassin's Creed, but we're gonna change it up a little bit. Oh, why? Because Assassin's Creed's unsuccessful? Why are you doing that? It makes no sense to me. So hopefully that is good. Dan and Dave, they're real hit and miss. Sometimes I think they're geniuses, and sometimes I think they're just floating. We'll see. They're about to be given a Star Wars franchise, and that'll tell you right there, because people are pretty scrutinizing over those. Okay, so we'll go to the museum, and you're walking into your museum. This is your top 5 museum. Where on there you have the 5 favorites for each genre. This one you go up to the RPG genre. You have only 5 games and only 1 of each franchise. Does this make your top 5?
Absolutely, it does. One of my favorite RPGs of all time, obviously one of my top 5, and it is the best of the Knights of the Old Republic franchise. Also, it led to one of my other favorite all-time games, which is also a BioWare game, being Mass Effect 1. That was one of my favorite games of all time, and this KOTOR being the precursor to that was chef's kiss. It was fantastic. Definitely Hall of Fame worthy for me.
I love that you said the chef's kiss instead of
doing it. I didn't want to make a kissy sound in my microphone.
No, I know. Now I'm gonna have to be doing it too. Okay, yeah, that I'm really on the fence on this one, but the fact that it led to dialogue trees is basically I'm gonna give this one the credit for making the type of dialogue trees that I love. Now I'm gonna put it up there, but it is a tight fight because RPGs, man, what a genre when you're talking about Oblivion, which I think is the best Elder Scrolls in my opinion. And you're talking
Morrowind.
Oh boy, there you go. Boy, I expected a Skyrim out of you, but a Morrowind, nice.
Oh no, Skyrim.
But yeah, I mean, it's just such a full and rich genre. But the innovation really makes this one bump up for me, so I'm gonna go ahead and put it up there. But it's barely holding on. They did put that screw in very well, so the frame's not so tight up there, but it's barely up there. All right, let's close things off with some fun facts. We have 4 of them for you. Okay, here we go. Out of all the these are from IMDb, guys, so check out IMDb for more of these. Out of all the characters that appear in this game, only Darth Revan was included in the revised Star Wars canon. He was about to make a brief appearance in Star Wars Clone Wars Ghost of Mortis in 2011. until the character was dropped later in productions. In 2019, Darth Revan was mentioned in the book Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker, the Visual Dictionary, and with that adaptation into the canon, as the revised canon occasionally adds popular characters from old canon, it is possible that this will be the case with more characters from the game in the future. So, because of the 2019 dictionary book that came out, he is now actually in our current Star Wars. Now we just got to make that a movie about it, but that's pretty good. Next up, Bastilla Shawn's character was originally meant to be Vima Sunrider, a young heroine from the Dark Horse Comics Tales of the Jedi series, who is instructed in the ways of the Jedi in the series Redemption. So they were actually kind of going to base this off of a comic book series that they did. But I'm kind of glad they made their own character. That way they can have the true, control over the character's choices. This is really good. Mission Vow says, I have a bad feeling about this at least twice in the game. This is a homage to the original film series. Of course, everybody who lightly knows about Star Wars knows that's set in every movie. Wait, is it set in every movie? I think it's set in Rogue One. There's one of them that was like, wait a minute. No, yeah, I think it was set in every
Rogue One, he gets cut off when he's saying it.
Oh, okay. That's what it is. I don't know. We'll count it. Okay, and then the last one we have here. When captured by... This is my favorite one. When captured by the Sith, you are asked the location of the Jedi base. You can lie and say Alderaan, while the base is actually on Dantooine. Yes. In episode 4 of the movies, while Princess Leia is captured by the Galactic Empire, she is questioned about the location of the Rebel base. She lies and says Dantooine to try to save Alderaan. I love that one. That's my favorite one.
It was a great touch.
Yeah. Oh, man. All right, guys. Again, Steam Mobile, go buy this game. Totally worth the play. We're giving it a 78 for me and a 94 for Kevin. Kevin, thank you so much for hanging out, man. Been great.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It refreshed my memory of this game, and I'm probably going to go back and play it.
Yeah, that's good. If people want to watch you play this and other games, can you go ahead and give us the Twitch one more time?
Yeah, twitch.tv/Kevinjection. That's a play on words. It's the name Kevin and the word injection. Slammed together. Man. Kevinjection.
Mind is blown. Great job. All right, guys, thank you again for hanging out for another Level Up. We're going to have another one coming each month from here on out, and we thank you guys so much for your support. We appreciate it. We'll see you guys next week. All right, bye.
Later.